Imagine this. One of your business partners passes away tomorrow. Suddenly, their spouse or their kids now own a share of the company, and you're expected to buy them out on the spot. Do you have that cash ready? My name is Laurent Munier. I'm a partner and advisor here at Safe Pacific Financial, and we work with Canadian business owners and professionals and their incorporated families who want to build a smart and tax-efficient wealth strategy while protecting their companies against the unexpected. So a buy-sell agreement outlines what happens when a shareholder leaves or retires or passes away. But if it isn't funded properly, that agreement is just words on paper. There's no real money. And so today, I'm going to show you how using life insurance to fund the buy-sell agreement guarantees liquidity, protects the business, and gives everybody peace of mind. So what is a buy-sell agreement? Well, a buy-sell agreement is a legally binding contract between business partners or between shareholders. So you can think of it like a business prenup. It clearly sets out what happens if one owner leaves the company due to retirement or disability or illness or divorce or death or any sort of reason. At the core, a buy-sell agreement is a succession planning tool. It protects both the company and it protects the shareholder's family by establishing a few things. So, who can buy the departing owner's shares? Is it existing partners? Is it the company? Can outside buyers participate? It also decides how those shares will be valued. Do you have a pre-agreed valuation formula? Do you get an independent appraisal? Do you have a fixed price? It also decides how that buyout is going to be funded. You pay cash? Do you take a loan? Do you use corporate reserves? Or, like we'll talk about today, is there a life insurance payout because somebody passed away, and then that funds the buy-sell agreement? So without having this clarity, the business could face turmoil when a triggering event occurs. So here's the problem without having funding in place. So the buy-sell agreement is only as strong as the funding mechanism. So if you don't have guaranteed funding in place, the agreement could collapse. And here's why. So the partners or the family may be forced to scramble for cash, and the surviving shareholders might need to drain corporate reserves. They might need to sell personal assets, or they might need to take on debt just to buy out the departing partner's shares. There could be valuation disputes. There could be legal friction. There could be delays. So if the value of the business is not clear and there's no funding available, this can lead to drawn-out disputes between the shareholders, between the family, and even between creditors. Or the heirs could inherit illiquid shares that they don't necessarily want. So the deceased shareholder's family may suddenly own a part of a company that they don't understand and that they don't want to be involved with. So without having that liquidity, they can't be bought out and they can't access the true value of their inheritance if those shares were valuable, but they don't get any money for it. And again, you might have the surviving shareholders, they might not have liquidity. So even if they do want to buy out the heirs, most of the business owners don't have large sums of cash readily available to buy out the other partner. So this could destabilize the company, this could jeopardize the operations, and this could create long-lasting conflict. So in short, a properly structured and a properly funded buy-sell agreement is one of the most important tools for business succession planning in Canada. This can help protect the company that you built, it can help protect the partners that you work with, and it helps protect the family that you leave behind. Now, how does life insurance help to fund a buy-sell agreement? How do these things work? When it comes to funding the buy-sell agreement, life insurance is often the most practical, the most tax-efficient, and the most reliable solution. So unlike relying on cash reserves or a bank loan or personal borrowing, life insurance guarantees that liquidity will be available when it's needed. This protects both the business and the shareholders' families. Now, here's why life insurance is really the preferred funding method for funding the buy-sell agreement if one of the shareholders dies. So number one is you have guaranteed liquidity when it matters the most. So with life insurance, there's no scrambling to sell assets, you don't have to secure any loans, and you don't have to drain the corporate cash. The insurance payout provides immediate and tax-efficient capital at the exact moment when that triggering event occurs. So the life insurance triggers if that shareholder dies, but it could also be if that shareholder gets ill. So say cancer, stroke, or heart attack, and they can't work anymore. And that's where you would want to have a critical illness policy, which falls into the life insurance umbrella. And then this ensures business continuity without a huge financial disruption. Secondly, is you want a pre-agreed valuation system so that you can reduce conflict. A properly structured buy-sell agreement will set out the valuation method for the business in advance. So by tying the valuation to whatever the life insurance payout, you eliminate disputes and uncertainty for both the surviving shareholders and for the deceased shareholder's family. Everybody knows what the business is worth, or how do you calculate what the business is worth, and then everybody is treated fairly. And it's usually, if it's through a valuation system, it's an independent third party. So it's not, well, I say it's worth this and you say it's worth that. How do we come to an agreement? Well, no, you say this is a professional valuator and this is what they say. Third is you've got flexible structures for all sorts of different situations. So different businesses require different buy-sell funding structures. So life insurance could be adapted to meet all of these needs. So you could have what's called a cross-purchase agreement, where each shareholder owns life insurance on the other person. So if one dies, their surviving shareholder uses that life insurance proceed to purchase the deceased person's shares. And usually you'd be giving that money to the family and then you'd be taking the shares back. So this structure is really straightforward if you've got two partners. It's more complex if you've got multiple partners or multiple owners. You could also have what's called entity purchase or redemption agreements. So the corporation itself owns the policy on each of the shareholders. So if one of them dies, the business receives the payout and then uses it to redeem the shares from the estate. So this option is often simpler to administer and it can be more tax efficient if you've got a larger company. You can also have a hybrid system. You can have a promissory note approach. So this combines features from both of these methods. So the corporation may redeem shares using life insurance while issuing a promissory note or using the capital dividend account to flow those funds tax-free to the estate. So this creates flexibility when the business valuation is really large or if it's a complex structure. Number 4 is you could use tax-efficient use of the capital dividend account or your CDA. So for Canadian corporations, one of the biggest advantages of using life insurance is the treatment under what's called your capital dividend account. We've got tons of videos on our YouTube channel about this, so search for it. CDA is what you want to look for. When the corporation receives life insurance proceeds, the majority can be credited to the CDA minus whatever your adjusted cost base is and allows the surviving shareholders or the heirs to get those funds out of the company tax-free. So this makes the corporate-owned life insurance policy one of the most efficient ways to fund the buy-sell agreement when you're in Canada. Now, the types of life insurance that you can use for the buy-sell agreement. So there's a few. You have term insurance. So this is ideal for short-term agreements such as covering the business partners until retirement or until you sell the business. It's affordable, but the coverage expires at the end of the term. It can be renewed. And those terms are usually 10 years or 20 years or maybe until the person turns 65. Then you have on the other side, you have permanent insurance. So this is things like whole life insurance or universal life insurance, or what they call a term to age 100, which is considered permanent insurance. So this provides lifetime coverage. Two of these will also build cash value. The term to 100 does not have cash value, but the universal life and the whole life has cash value inside, which can grow over time on a tax-deferred basis. So this guarantees the liquidity for the buy and sell agreement, but it also can serve as a conservative and corporate asset, which can offer borrowing power and additional flexibility for the business while you guys are alive. So why does properly funding the buy-sell agreement matter? Well, without proper funding, the buy-sell agreement is just paper. It's a legal document, but it doesn't solve the financial problem. It tells people what they're supposed to do, but if you don't have money to actually do it, you can't do it, right? So backing your buy-sell agreement with life insurance makes sure that you have smooth business continuity. It'll keep the company running without major financial disruptions. It'll also provide money so you can have fair value for the heirs, right? The families can receive a clean, tax-free payout instead of company shares, which they might not be able to sell and they might not be able to get money for. It also provides ownership stability. So the remaining shareholders retain control of the business without taking on additional debt, without having to sell assets, or without having to dilute equity, and without having to go into business with the other shareholders' family, which was never part of the plan. So in short, life insurance transforms this buy-sell agreement from a good idea and a piece of paper into a fully functioning business system, a succession strategy. It provides certainty and protection and peace of mind for everybody involved. Now, here's a real-world example of why this type of funding matters. And this is a scenario that we've seen with Canadian business owners. So two partners I'm going to call them Mark and David. Obviously, this is not their real names, but they had a successful engineering firm here in Vancouver, and they'd built this business together over the last 20 years. And it's worth around $5 million. They each owned 50% of the company. They had a lawyer draft the buy-sell agreement when they started. It was part of, they had the shareholders agreement, they had the buy-sell agreement, and that was done 20 years ago. But they never put in place the life insurance, so there was never a mechanism to fund it. And then recently, we'll call him David, passed away. So here's what happened. David's 50% ownership doesn't just disappear, right? The shares went to his spouse, who had no interest in running the company. She's not an engineer. This is not her job. Mark wants to buy out David's wife or David's estate, but he doesn't have the money. He doesn't have cash on hand. So the company's money is tied up in equipment. It's tied up in accounts receivable. They've got contracts, but they don't have the money. And it's not liquid, right? So David's spouse, understandably, wants fair market value for the shares for his half, but there's no funding in place. There's no system for the business valuation. And then the valuation becomes a point of dispute. So Mark was forced to seek outside financing, which meant he had to take on debt at the worst possible time. He just lost his business partner. We don't know what that effect is going to be on the business. Are they going to start to lose money? We don't know. So the result, months of stress, racking legal bills, like the lawyers get paid no matter what in all of this, a strained relationship. They were friends before, but now you have a big money dispute and there's a strained family relationship with the spouse and the kids just because they're expecting this money, but then an also strained relationship between him and the ex-partner's wife and a serious disruption to the firm. And now he's also not thinking about being a great engineer. He's thinking about, how do I pay out my partner's wife? Not an ideal situation. But this could have really been simply fixed and it could have been different. So if Mark and David had used life insurance to fund their buy-sell agreement, and it was actually written in the buy-sell agreement, it's a default in the lawyer's templates that it says buy-sell agreement, if one dies, there should be insurance to pay this out. Almost all buy-sell agreements have this written in it, but then you have to actually go get the insurance, which doesn't always happen. So the company, or Mark directly, depending on how the structure, if they had the insurance, would have received an immediate tax-free insurance payout when David died. And then those funds would have been used to pay out David's estate or to pay out his spouse fairly for the shares. And then the shares would have been transferred from the family back to Mark, or if it was paid out to the corporation, it would have been redeemed by the corporation. And then the company could have continued to operate smoothly without incurring more debt, without having to sell equity, and without this prolonged legal battle. And again, you're draining money from the company and paying lawyers when you're doing this. So this is how you're supposed to properly do it. You set up the buy-sell agreement. It says to get insurance. Then you should actually go get the insurance, right? This is how you have properly funded buy-sell agreements. This is what that means, right? It transforms this tragedy into a smooth transition. It protects the business, it protects the shareholders, and it protects the deceased person's family. So how do we help? Why am I talking about this? This is what we do. We know that designing and funding the buy-sell agreement could potentially be overwhelming for many Canadian business owners. So you've built the company to grow. You didn't build it to get stuck in legal and financial complexity, right? And this is why we make this buy-sell planning strategic, tax efficient, and stress-free. So what do we do? More on a hands-on basis. We design that right structure for your business. So, we'll consult on it and then the lawyer will actually do the writing of the contracts. But whether that's a cross-purchase or an entity redemption or some sort of hybrid, we can figure out the company's size, the shareholder mix, and that long-term succession plan, right? Because not all businesses are the same. So having the right structure for your situation makes the difference. And then we would coordinate whatever the valuation is. So we figure out, how do you get to the valuation? Because when they set it up 20 years ago, the company was not worth the same as it is worth today, the $5 million 20 years later. So we set up these valuations and the insurance planning. So the buy-sell agreement is only as effective as the money behind it, right? So we would get a valuation specialist in there, or we would probably introduce the valuation specialist. We don't do this ourselves, but we would have set up insurance to ensure that life insurance coverage reflected the current fair market value of the business. So we would have set up a life insurance policy at the beginning, but also reviewed it over time to make sure that the number on that life insurance policy is the correct number. Like, how much is the company worth today? And that the policies are owned the right way. So do the individual shareholders own the policy? Does the business own the policy? And that it's all structured correctly. And then this would include using tools like the Capital Dividend Account to make sure that that payout goes to the heirs tax-free. And then you write that all into the contract so that everybody knows what happens if this happens, right? And then we would align with your legal team and your tax team, your accountant. That buy-sell agreement touches multiple areas, right? There's law, there's tax, there's insurance. So we would work with your lawyer, with your accountant, so that this agreement and the valuation method and the insurance all work together, and that there's no mismatch and there's no room for dispute, or there's no big tax surprise later on. And especially like at the worst time, like this guy just died. This is not what anybody wants to be thinking about. This is not what anybody wants to be doing. And then over time, as a client, we work with clients over time, and we talk to them every year. Well, more than every year, but we keep the agreement up to date. So the business grows, the ownership evolves, the valuation changes. So what was the valuation and what worked 10 years ago or 5 years ago? You might be underinsured or misaligned today. So we would have an ongoing review of the buy-sell agreement, and we would make sure that the insurance funding evolves over time as the business grows. So with this type of approach, you're not just checking the box with the buy-sell agreement, you're building the business resilience, right? The company continues smoothly, even though this really bad thing just happened. You've got family protection, so your family would receive fair, tax-efficient compensation for the shares instead of receiving these shares that they can't sell and they can't get money for. You'd have ownership stability, right? The remaining shareholders keep control of the company without having to go massively into debt, or without having to have conflict amongst themselves or amongst themselves with the outside person's family. And there's peace of mind. You know that your business, your family, and your partners are all protected, right? Our mission is super simple. It's to make sure that the company that you built stays strong, to make sure that everything is tax efficient, to make sure that everything is family friendly for decades to come, no matter what happens, right? Like, our job is to be here when the bad things happen and to have money ready to pay for things. So why does funding the buy-sell agreement matter? This is going to be the final thought. So at the end of the day, the buy-sell agreement without proper funding is just a promise on paper. The legal contract may outline who gets what and how those shares transfer, but if there's no money to pay for everything, that entire plan can collapse when you need it the most. So when that triggering event happens, you're not ready. So that's why using life insurance to fund the buy-sell agreement is so powerful. It transforms this agreement from theory into a practical, tax-efficient succession plan that protects your business, and that protects your business partners, and that protects your family. So with this life insurance in place, you get immediate liquidity when this triggering event happens. So in this case, it was when he died, but it could be anything, right? But it's death, disability, retirement, divorce. So the company or surviving shareholders receive this instant cash injection. Well, the life insurance only kicks in on death, and critical illness insurance would kick in on an illness. So this eliminates the needs for loans or for selling equity or for draining cash reserve. We also have this fair and pre-agreed valuation system. So the valuation dispute, this is one of the biggest risks in succession planning. Like, what is the thing worth? Life insurance ensures that that value is clear and agreed upon in advance and delivered fairly to the family, right? And how do you value it? So you say, we're going to get an independent valuation, or we're going to base it based on revenue or based on profit, or we're going to just pick a number. Whatever it is, write it down and stick to it. This also provides that business ownership continuity, right? The company continues to operate smoothly, the ownership transitions seamlessly, and then the surviving shareholders keep control of the business without taking on a lot of debt and without having a fight with the dead person's family. It also provides that tax-efficient wealth transfer. So in a corporate-owned structure, that insurance can flow through your capital dividend account minus whatever your adjusted cost base is, which lets the payouts to the family be tax-free. So this means that the family gets the full value of the inheritance, not just what's left after the CRA takes the cut. So if you're a Canadian entrepreneur or business owner, this isn't just about protecting against the unexpected. It's about building your business resilience. It's about building your family security. And it's about guaranteeing intergenerational wealth transfers, right? If you want your family to be well off. We believe that every Canadian business owner deserves a proper buy-sell agreement that works when the worst happens. So with that right structure, with the right funding, and with the ongoing planning, you make sure that your company, your family, and your legacy are protected for as long as you run the company, for decades, right? Now, if you're a Canadian business owner, you've got partners, you've got a family, you've got other shareholders, and you haven't funded the buy-sell agreement, or you're not sure, let's talk. This is what we do. We do this actually quite a lot. So funding the buy-sell agreement in the right way, making sure that insurance is in place, coordinating the insurance, coordinating your lawyer, coordinating your accountant, and making sure that everybody's on the same page with the strategy, and making sure that you have clarity and that you have control to protect your business now and in the future. So how do you do this? Well, number one, go to our website, safepacific.com. There's a lot of buttons on there that you can push that'll send us a message, or you can book directly in our calendar. There's a lot of book a meeting buttons on the website. You'll see them as soon as you get there. Schedule one of those meetings. There's no pressure. There's no rush. Nobody's going to call you 100 times to try to sell you anything. That's not our job. That's not what we like to do, so we're not going to. But yeah, just go to the website. It's safepacific.com. I'll also leave a link below the video or above the video or wherever you're watching this. It'll be somewhere around here, and you can click to do that directly. Now, if you found this valuable, please do all the things that the algorithm likes. Make sure that the robots know that you think this is an important video. So click like, click to share this with somebody who owns a business and maybe they don't have insurance in place to fund their buy-seller agreement yet. If you have any questions or if you have any comments, if you would just want to tell me that I said something wrong or right or this changed your life, leave it in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe. So those are all the things that'll tell the robots that, hey, you love us and that you think other business owners should watch this video too. That's it for today. Go fund your buy-sell agreement. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.